All right, guys, welcome back. We were talking about nutrition and metabolism, and we're deep in the middle of that. We're going to break out to part 2 here, and we're going to talk about when that kind of goes off the rails. Let's talk about malnutrition. Malnutrition is when you have a lack of essential nutrients in your diet. It can be caused by over or under nutrition, and most of the time it's usually due to bad lack of food, poor quality food. It can be due to overeating, by the way. So yes, you can cause malnutrition by eating too much. And then taking too many vitamin supplements. Again, down in the bottle Flintstones is not the way to get your vitamins, again, in moderation. Okay? So again, if you overeat with insufficient exercise, that again can cause someone to be overweight. And your obesity, the body mass index of 30 or more, again, this is a calculated what the body mass index is. It's usually divided by the weight in kilograms by the height of the person in meters squared. And then again, your cellular metabolism, again, is the process in which nutrients are supplied and used in the cells. Again, more exercise you do, the more you burn off fuel. Again, the less you do, but you still keep that caloric intake in. Again, you're gonna start to store that as fat, and at a certain point, again, it's gonna create more and more fat, and again, it would cause obesity. Now, your metabolism, it consists of chemical changes that takes place inside the living cell. So again, as organisms, we grow, we maintain our body function. By the way, those are different rates at different times at different places. Again, a little kid, these are the guys that, drink their juice box and boom, next thing you know, they're bouncing off the wall for 4 hours, and then they get inside and they get in a nice, cool air conditioning, asleep. So again, that has to do again with metabolism. All right. There are certain people that have a hyper or accelerated metabolism. There are people that have a slower metabolism. Again, it's the chemical changes in nature, and it's how we maintain our homeostasis. Okay. So there are diseases that can cause problems as far as metabolism. So the two reactions in metabolism is anabolism and catabolism, and each requires the use of energy. So again, anabolism is building complex molecules from simpler materials, okay? And so it supplies the chemicals that we need the cell so that they can grow and repair. So monosaccharides, they form a link of change which make up glycogen. This is an example of anabolism, okay? And again, dehydration, again, it can link glycerol and fatty acid molecules, and from there, that's where the glycerin molecule would then, it would form into a triglyceride, okay? And then it occurs when three hydrogen atoms are moved into a glycerin molecule. So again, think of triglycerides as kind of watered out glycogen molecules. All right. So you can also have dehydration synthesis join into amino acids that they can form protein molecules, okay? So polypeptides would be a great example of that, because that's like 100 molecules of a protein connected together, okay? Some of these things can get extremely complex. Now, catabolism is the breakdown of stored carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to provide energy. Talked about this one a little bit earlier. So actually, when you put your body into ketosis, you're actually burning off the fat, but what you're causing it to do is to break down the fat, and one of the byproducts of that is ketones, okay, which forms a certain degree of acidosis. That is a catabolism reaction, by the way. The hydrolysis is the opposite of dehydration. So you're actually adding water to a molecule. And again, remember that dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis, they are reversible. That's how one of the ways that we can maintain our metabolism. So a good example is hydrolysis is used when we break down food. It breaks down the carbohydrates into monosaccharides, okay? And it also breaks down fats into glycerols, and it'll break down nucleic acids into nucleotides. All of these are catabolistic reactions, okay? So what controls our metabolic reactions? A lot of things. Nerve, muscles do, blood cells. It also has performs basic chemical reactions, hormonal reactions. Enzymes do this as well. And again, an enzyme is a protein that catalyzes biochemical reactions. Okay, so it helps out. It assists an action to happen. That's what an enzyme does. I talked about this earlier. It's why we can't eat cellulose, but why cows can. They have an enzyme that breaks the cellulose down into a simple sugar. Humans, we don't have that. All right. So a substrate, by the way, is a particular chemical that affected by an enzyme. Okay. So if it's affected by the enzyme, it's a substrate. And the enzyme is usually often named after their substrate. A matter of fact, good example of that, acetylcholine. All right. Acetylcholine neurotransmitter, acetylcholinesterase. Enzyme breaks down acetylcholine. The substrate is acetylcholine. Okay. So that's what it actually does. The acetylcholinesterase breaks that down. All right. So again, it's an enzyme substrate reaction. And again, just remember, by the way, that these actions are usually reversible. Okay. And they often are. Okay. So can our body alter the enzymes? Yes, it can. And fluids can have an extreme pH level of that. They can denature. They can change, alter some form of structure of the enzyme. Or they can have cofactors. In other words, non-proteins that combine with some enzymes to help activate them. So all of these play a part in the metabolism process. All right. Chemical energy. Again, most metabolic processes use a chemical energy. Matter of fact, a good example is the ATP to ADP change there. It usually releases heat. And matter of fact, we use that for thermoregulation of our bodies to maintain, again, homeostasis. We want to keep that 98.6, what a normal temperature is for our body. Our muscles do that. Again, we take energy that we derive from the glucose and the oxygen, and then it creates the heat when we use it to create energy for our muscles. The muscles move. It creates that thermal energy. Again, it releases when the bonds are, the atoms or the molecules are broken. We call that oxidation. If you really stop and think about it, what happens in the citric acid cycle, which, by the way, I hope that you guys stopped the video a lot earlier and have gone through the citric acid cycle, because if you haven't, you probably should. I'm going to warn you one more time before we get there about knowing that process. And because, again, that is an oxidation process. We're adding oxygen to the carbohydrate molecules in order to make energy. Okay. So that's what we're doing. Okay. And again, however, when we do that, by the way, only 40% of the energy is released and transferred, and the remaining energy usually escapes as heat. Okay. Now, cellular respiration. We've talked a lot about this in pathophysiology. We're definitely going to talk about it a lot right now. All right. It's the process in which the energy is released through the organic compounds. It's usually, we want it to be aerobic metabolism, meaning with oxygen. There are three types of reactions: the glycolysis reaction, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. When we don't have oxygen, we can do the glycolysis part, but here's the problem. Creates a ton of acid, causes and again, so what glycolysis is the glucose is broken down to yield lactic and pyruvic acid. And in that process, it releases a little bit of energy, ATP molecules, 4 to be exact. So once that pyruvic acid gets in there, there's an enzyme that transmits that to acetyl-CoA, which starts the citric acid cycle. It then further goes into the electron chain, which then further gives us additional energy. And I repeat, if you have not watched the citric acid cycle video, you really need to stop the video right here, right now, and go watch that thing, okay? It's okay. If you have watched it, you understand how this process works. Now, again, I'm not going to beat this one to death because this is what's actually on the video. And so you really need to understand that glycolysis process, okay? And how it breaks the fuel. The thing about glycolysis is, guys, it does not require oxygen, okay? So you will make a little bit of energy during this stage of the process, okay? And it usually, again, happens in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, okay? Now, the problem is that it generates a large amount of lactic and pyruvic acid, okay? And the problem is if that's not converted, if that is not oxygenated, again, it's going to build up acid within your body, which is going to cause all kinds of problems. It's going to cause your body to become acidic. Again, things aren't going to work the way that they're supposed to. If they become too acidic, your cells will simply start to die. Now, the good thing is if we add oxygen to this, we can add 36 ATP to this, okay? So the amount of glucose also produces the carbon dioxide and water. By the way, we can also break down other things, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. So again, the TCA cycle, the citric acid cycle, formerly known as the Krebs cycle. Again, it's the enzymatic reactions that cause this process to happen. And remember when I said that there was a lot of enzymes involved with this? Yes, there are a ton of enzymes involved with this. What I want to really stress to you is make sure that you watch that other video because it will go through all of this cycle. And that's what we want to do. Every bit of this cycle it's going to go through. Now, do I want you to know that acetyl-CoA transmits it and then different other enzymes take place here? That part I don't want you to know because, quite frankly, at the emergency medical level, it's kind of a nice thing to know, but it's not what I want you to know is the energy that is created because of that cycle, okay? That's what I want you to know, is when it gets into that electron transport chain, how it breaks down those materials that were made back in this guy right here. That's how it makes, oops, sorry, I hit the right slide here. That when it breaks it down into here, how it ends up in the electron transport chain, how it oxidizes the rest of that material and then produces a massive amount of energy for us to use. So again, back to this, not so much energy being made, no oxygen involved. Back to here, oxygen involved. Back to here, oxygen involved produces large amounts of energy, which is why oxygenation is so important, that we have to have the oxygen at the cell level in order for all of this to work correctly. Okay? When you don't have that oxygen there, when you don't have that fuel there, it starts making acid. And when it starts making acid, that's where it causes problems for us. Okay? Body regulation, again, it's usually maintained through body temperature, and usually our hypothalamus is the guy that does this. Thermolysis is the normal body means of losing heat. We are constantly being exposed to hot and cold. We are constantly changing that. And again, our body has mechanisms by either heating up, muscular activity usually, or cooling down, usually a sweat reaction, or dissipating heat by certain means. This is very important for our firefighter brothers out there because, again, when we're going into an environment that's hotter than that, we start to absorb heat. A lot of times when a firefighter comes out of a fire in protective gear, which, by the way, is sealed with a thermal layer and an outer and another vapor protective layer, your body has the inability to sweat. It can't radiate heat. It's not able to conduct heat. It's completely surrounded once you go into a fire. You can't get the air to circulate through there, and your evaporation process stops, okay? So your body is unable to cool. And this is again, it's also lost during breathing, by the way. So really our only cooling mechanism in our body is the air pack that's on, okay? So stop and think about that for just a sec. Now, your body fluid balances. You got intracellular fluids, extracellular fluids. Usually homeostasis is maintained. Kidney function has a lot to do with this, okay? Despite inconsistencies, there's going to be times that we take in a lot of water. There's going to be times that we don't, okay? We're not camels, okay? But we have to maintain our control of what we intake and output, all right? So if we're not taking in as much fluid, our body's going to say, hey, stop. Let's stop getting rid of stuff. Now, again, with different disease processes, that might become a problem. What about your diabetic who's wanting to pee stuff out? He's got a lot of glucose in his system, a lot of glucose in the kidneys, and so basically it tells the kidneys, hey, get rid of that glucose. They start peeing a lot. They start pulling the fluid, again, usually from the extracellular, then the intracellular, so they will appear dehydrated for us, okay? Same way with a septic patient. Their vessels get big, they're trying to fight off the infection, they're creating a large amount of heat, they do a lot of sweating. Next thing you know, they've run out of fluid to maintain these processes. And significant losses in those fluids can result in a shock state. So always remember, we have to be able to maintain that fluid balance. Our antidiuretic hormone kind of controls that a little bit. By the way, that's why your diabetics get really thirsty, because again, they need more water to pee out. So hey, they need to take more drinks and they need to take more intake. Same way. And now the problem is with septics, usually is their GI tract usually shuts down because of that. So again, it starts to shift the fluid, and an improper fluid balance, by the way, can cause disease and death. Okay, so it's really important to understand that little principle. Dehydration, we used to not treat it as aggressively. Now with our shock situations, we usually treat that a lot more aggressively, especially our septic patients. You'll be surprised how much. And in that case, when we've got an intact circulatory system where we're not losing red blood cells, it's actually a good thing. All right, that's it for this video. I'm going to see you guys on the next one. Take care.